We're going to take a look at the four definitions of grammar, which is the key point in chapter one. The four definitions of grammar and how each definition of grammar looks at language differently. So it would be narrow minded for us to claim that there's simply one way of looking at language, one correct way, and all the others are butchering the language. So as we break down grammar, we're going to find that there are four different ways of looking at grammar. The first one's going to be what we call your grammar gut. So, your grammar gut is a system of rules that are already in your head. They're in your head because most of us speak English all the time. It's the language we grew up learning. We were surrounded by it as children. We watched it on TV. We heard it on the radio. Our parents spoke it. It was just a part of our culture. So, therefore, we learned a lot of grammar just by being around people who spoke grammar. Who spoke English. We read English, all that. So these become these subconscious internalized rules. So your grammar gut is sort of like what's inside of you that when you hear something which is right, you know it's right because your gut just says, well, yeah, that sounds right to me. Or your gut says, I don't think that's right. I don't know. I can't explain why. It just doesn't sound right to me. So remember your grammar gut, to that grammar gut, it just sounds right or it just sounds wrong, but we don't know why. It just sounds that way. It's very instinctual. So your grammar gut would laugh at you for taking a grammar class because your grammar gut would say, you know enough as being a native English speaker to be able to survive. You don't need a grammar class. You know what's right and what things don't sound right because your gut can feel it. Let's test it. Let's see how good your grammar guts can be. So if I said, I go to college, or do you plan to go to college, or where do you go to college? That makes sense. My grammar gut smiles at that. If I say, where do you go to school, or I have to go to school, makes sense. I have to go to church. I get to go to church. I love to go to church. All those make sense. What about go to university? If I said, do you go to university? Or are you planning to go to university? Where do you go to university? We all like, my grammar gut is like tightening up just thinking about that phrase because that makes no sense at all. Is like say, I need to go to store. I think we're out of milk. I need to go to store. I need to go to the store, but no one says I need to go to store. Go to hospital. I'm hurt. I need to go to hospital. I need to go to hospital. But no one would ever say that in their right mind. And no one ever needs to go to bank. I need to go to bank. You might need to go to the bank, but no one needs to go to bank. And the thing is, if I look at this listing of phrases here, why is it that I can simply say college, school, and church, but I can't say university, store, hospital, bank? Why? And what's even more peculiar is here in America, those last four phrases don't make any sense. But over in Great Britain, they most certainly say things like go to university. They most certainly say go to hospital. I don't know about store and bank, but I know for sure in England they say go to a university and go to hospital. And why in America it doesn't make sense to us because our grammar gut just cringes at that idea. And I couldn't explain why. It's instinctual for us of what's right and what's wrong. Here's another test. I could say, oh, you are silly. And I could turn it around saying, you're being silly. Same thing. How about some other adjectives? You are strange. Or I could turn around saying, you're being strange. But why can't I say, you are tall? You're being tall. Knock it off. You're being tall. Or and some people are like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. You know, like you're not always silly. You're not always strange, but some of us are always going to be tall. Isn't that the difference? I'm like, okay, how about hunger? I'm not always hungry. So I could say you are hungry, but I couldn't say you're being hungry. You're being hungry. Why? Something in my grammar gut tells me that certain adjectives fit and certain adjectives don't fit with this phrase. I don't know why, but that's my grammar gut. Another one. Let's go blanking. Physical activities fit really well in here, or at least most physical activities. Let's go swimming. Let's go running. Let's go bowling. Yes. Cooking's a physical activity, but no one ever says, let's go cooking. And drawing's a physical activity, but no one can say, let's go drawing. Eating is my favorite physical activity. but no one ever says, let's go eating. Procrastinating is a lot of your favorite activities, maybe. It's a mental activity, but no one ever says, let's go procrastinating. Putting. No one can deny the fact that when you put something means to place. You're physically doing something, but no one ever says, let's go pudding. Sounds like you're cheering for a dessert. Why do some of those INGs work and some don't? Your grammar gut says, I don't know. And what I love about the grammar gut is the grammar gut laughs at those of us sitting in grammar class and says, there's nothing that Mr. Marsh is ever going to teach you to explain why some of those work and some don't. It's true. There's just some aspects of grammar that I can't explain. That's the grammar gut that kicks in. Don't neglect your grammar gut. So more than likely, your grammar gut cringes at words like ain't and brung. You're like, that's not good. It tightens on double contractions like shouldn't have and I'd have. You're like, ah. But it relaxes on words like all right and irregardless. It's interesting. It may even avoid whom altogether. You're like, I don't know how to use whom. I'm not sure the rules of whom. I don't like the sound of whom. I'm just not going to use it. But it might overlook scarcely never. In short, the point is the definition of grammar believes that this definition rather of grammar believes that the rules should describe and reflect how the language is currently being used. That's really important. I'll say it again. That the grammar gut, the way it looks at language, it says, let's make the rules based on how we're using the language already. So that's why we call it descriptive grammar. The grammar rules basically describe how it's already being used. So if we think that ain't and brung are not really words, then the rules we should make rules that say don't use ain't and brung. If we hear words like all right and irregardless, and we're like that makes sense to me, then our grammar rules say yeah, use them. If our grammar rules say I don't know how to really use the word whom or whom seems stuffy, let's not use it anymore, then the grammar rules kind of say let's just forget the word whom. If scarcely never doesn't bother anyone, then the grammar rules would say, let's accept that. So grammar rules are basically looking at how we're using the language already, and then we base the rules off of that. And that's called descriptive grammar. This is the first definition of grammar.